So yesterday was the worst day in the Channel since Sir Keir Starmer took over. 703 illegal migrants in 11 boats. Before the election, we were told about smashing the gangs and about a new border command, or whatever they're calling it. We are yet to hear anything about those things since, aren't we? There have been protests, riots. There are millions of people who are angry, and immigration is now the top issue facing the country for most people, according to the latest YouGov polling. But the now Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, knew we'd end up here. In 2016, she said, riots could sweep Britain if immigration is not curbed after Brexit. Labour grandee, former Labour Minister Dame Margaret Hodge has just said, we're all at fault that we've always been too frightened to talk about immigration. They all know it, we all know it, and yet we've got silence from Downing Street. Now, this could be why. So a BBC reporter revealed that Sir Keir Starmer didn't want to mention immigration as a cause of the protests in case people thought he was suggesting the unrest was justified. Well, I have another theory. Sir Keir Starmer knows what's coming. Thousands more coming across the Channel. Every single one of them will have the chance to claim asylum. Labour has scrapped the British Homes for British Workers scheme, so Brits will not be prioritised for what little social housing stock there is. The 1.5 million new homes Labour wants to build, local councils will be given compulsory purchase powers to buy greenbelt land cheaply, and a lot of those things will have to be social housing. Who is going to live in that housing? And he's created a situation now where people who might want to demonstrate against that happening in their local area or might want to complain about it on social media now worry that they're going to be called far-right, arrested and potentially put in prison. I wonder whether instead of dealing with illegal immigration, Sir Keir Starmer wants to scare people into staying silent about it. I don't think he'll win that fight. But let's get the thoughts of my panel now. It's Daily Express columnist Carol Malone. I'm also joined by journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, former chairman of the Tory party. It's Sir Jake Berry. Carol, I'll start with you on this. When you look at what's coming down the track here, so social housing, Brits no longer being a priority for that, new developments, a lot of that being social housing, these thousands, hundreds of thousands of people being allowed to claim asylum when previously they wouldn't have been. Do you think he knows what's coming and he's trying to clamp down on social media now to scare people into not complaining about it?
He must know what's coming. My God, you just have to read the papers of the past 2 weeks to know what's coming. However, I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem with him and a lot of people in the Labour Party, they don't see immigration as a problem. They when Starmer was DPP, he said quite clearly that he thought much of immigration law was racist, and he thinks that attacking immigrants is racist. So I think that is the problem that we have. He doesn't see that it's going to be a problem. But I think he was very fond of calling Boris Johnson a liar. But in the run-up to election, he promised us all that he had a plan, a ready-to-go plan to deal with immigration and a plan to deal with stopping the boats. We see now he has no plan whatsoever. There's no smashing the gangs. Robert Jenrick came up with a really interesting figure today, and he was talking about what every immigrant will cost in a lifetime to this country. 400 grand per person. Now, they're working on the fact that it's 20-odd grand a year to keep an immigrant currently. So,
is that an illegal immigrant or a legal immigrant?
That is any immigrant that you have to house and feed and clothe. So I'm guessing the illegal ones. So, we had 700 this weekend. All of those people have to be fed, clothed, housed. They have to be given spending money. They get free NHS care, dental care. So all of that tots up, and they call it a social wage. It's about 20-odd grand a year. So all of this is costing a fortune to the British taxpayer. And I think this is why they get cross. And if Starmer doesn't realise that's what's coming down the line, he shouldn't be where he is.
Benjamin, I do wonder whether or not people now are going to be scared to post something on, your classic well-meaning local Facebook group, where it's like, I don't actually particularly want this migrant hotel or this massive development, around the corner from my house. So I'm a bit concerned. Should we do something like stand outside with placards, right? And then all of a sudden, you've been done for trying to incite some hatred towards that group of people or inciting some violence against that block. I just wonder if it's quite calculated, this, by Sir Keir.
No, I think what you're saying is dangerous, because confronting people that are inciting violence, are inciting hatred, things that have been illegal in this country for about 40 years, have been on the statute book. Whether that is on Twitter or a local Facebook group, or whether it's in the street shouting at a Muslim passing by, it is unacceptable. And I don't understand how you can sit there and say that somehow we shouldn't be clamping down on these crimes because they're on the internet. Well,
no, I do think we should be clamping down on genuine crimes.
Serious crime on the streets.
I do think we should be clamping down on genuine crimes, but there is a a pervading thing that happens here, which is that now the ordinary, well-meaning people will be worried about, do I post on social media that I'm not particularly happy about a housing development that's going to be 45% social housing, that really, given the direction of travel here, is probably going to include quite a few people who might have just arrived to this country in my sleepy little village.
That's wrong. If you don't have a right to remain in the UK, then you're not eligible for social housing, whether it's under suggested changes of Angela Rayner's or not. So that's wrong. Secondly, the number of people, the rate of immigrants that are in full-time work and paying taxes is higher than the rate of British-born. So I'm sorry, Carol, but we as a country would be considerably poorer if we didn't have all the taxes from the working-age people coming here.
So Labour said in 2016, Rachel Reeves said in 2016, there will be riots if we don't sort out immigration. We didn't sort out immigration. Now, to be fair, that was the Tories' fault, OK, because Labour have just got in. But it's not as if this can be a shock to them, can it?
No, and just to pick up on that point, you're right, the Conservatives didn't get a grip of this, and we have our share of blame. I'm not running away from that. I think the problem you've got with the Labour government is there's no real opposition. Where is Rishi Sunak? Well, he's in California.
Hills, yeah.
Yeah, so there's no real opposition. They have a massive majority. It is actually the closest thing to an elected dictatorship that this country has ever known, because there's no real power of the opposition to defeat any government with a majority of 170, I beg your pardon. Weak oppositions create bad governments. And that's what I think Keir Starmer is falling into, probably unintended, a trap of. He has so much power that he feels that he can subjugate the British people with this sort of culture of fear, that if you mention immigration, you're in some way racist. And the thing I would mention, just what I think, let me finish, the thing I would mention, which I think is particularly pernicious about this, judges this week have said that people will be prosecuted and go to prison for being in the streets at these riots. That's what the judges said. Said if you attended, even if you were just a spectator, so if you came out your house, now what's all this going on? Have a look what's going on outside. You could potentially be prosecuted. That is creating a culture of fear that is designed to stop people challenging the government legitimately on this issue.
On this culture of fear business, all right, you know, there's a ridiculous thing that was going around last week when these supposed 100 far-right riots were supposed to be taking place. There are places around the country that I know well, and that you know well as well, where there were boarding places up. GPs were shutting early. Children were being told to leave school early. It's the place that I grew up in. I've never met a Nazi. I've never met a Nazi there. And somehow, because of what was going around on social media, this far-right Nazi threat, they were going to come out of the sky and they were going to batter the place to pieces, all right? And now, when people in that same area, and mark my words, when we start seeing these new housing developments pop up and we start seeing people being put in those who have only just come to this country, or it's social housing, etc., people will feel afraid now, I fear, under Labour, to say anything about that, because they will be bracketed as a far-right.
We all have to hammer the message home that it's not far-right and it's not xenophobic to have genuine concerns about the uncontrolled numbers coming into this country. Not just uncontrolled, but unvetted. And, you know, the security services said quite clearly they're concerned about the numbers of people coming in from Muslim countries that are not vetted. Now, that is terrifying for us, and we can't be frightened to talk about that and to who they are because they might belong to a certain religion. We have to talk about it.
Currently, Benjamin, we are importing both sides of the Sudanese civil war, OK? We did an exclusive on this at 9 p.m. last week. All right, we've got people from the north and south of Sudan who have got a pitched battle going on in Calais, both groups of whom want to come here on boats. I've got a problem with that. I think most people would have a problem with that, but it feels as though at the moment you can't call that out in case you might be called a racist.
The vast majority of people coming into the country are legal migrants with a job in a very straightforward fashion. That's 700,000 of them.
They're not going to be the ones that...
Lots of them from Hong Kong and Ukraine who are fairly skilled. But I just wanted to point out that Jake Berry just had the audacity to sit there and say we're as near to an elective dictatorship we've ever had, a Prime Minister who thinks he can do whatever he wants. The last Parliament prorogued Parliament so that it couldn't sit, so there could be a vote on nothing. You supported that.
There's a difference between a majority of 80 and a majority of 170.
You just said you've got a Prime Minister doing what he wants from a bloke that was chairman of the party that literally shut down Parliament. And so be a bit realistic about what your own lot did, which was terrifying and unnecessary.
Well, do you know what? As you've asked me, I'll answer that very directly. In my view, the government was absolutely right to prorogue Parliament to try and deliver Brexit, because the entirety of the British establishment and the opposition party was trying to frustrate Brexit. And if you want to see how deep-seated, as it happens, I was there. So let me tell you what it was actually like, rather than just sort of speculation. It tells you how deep-seated the resistance to delivering the will of the British people was, that you had judicial activism from the judges that overturned, in my view, the completely legitimate use of royal prerogative. I am a lawyer. I wasn't sat in that courtroom. I actually think it was more to do with judicial activism and the state wanted to stop Brexit than the law itself.
Doesn't it feel a bit like Brexit right now, where people are... It was the same during Brexit. People were afraid to speak out about immigration for fear...
You never stopped speaking out.
And yes, they did stop speaking out. People were made to feel bad, and now, since Brexit, we feel more able. And now Starmer's trying to put the
You get wall-to-wall coverage of white people making pseudo-racist comments. Twitter is full of it. I can't escape it. The idea that we don't talk about immigration in this country, we talk about...
Well, what is Starmer saying? We're talking now about him trying to close it down, discussion down about immigration.
I tell you what, nobody has done more to undermine legitimate debates about immigration than these thugs in the last 2 weeks and the people that have supported them.
Which include just the white thugs?
Well, thugs of any description, but it's the people you're talking about saying, well, they have a legitimate root cause. These people do not have a legitimate cause.
But let's talk about Labour's intentions.
They care more about looting Greggs. But they ain't looting Greggs because of the Sudanese civil war, Patrick.
Can I just say that that's a really good example, because there is a real big difference between the kind of people who don't necessarily want a migrant hotel at the end of their road and a group of people who want to burn that down, right?
Yeah.
And I'm concerned.
The root cause of what's going on in recent weeks.
I'm saying that I worry that we have a Prime Minister now that is creating a situation whereby those ordinary people...
make it the same.
Exactly.
I am concerned if someone opened a migrant hotel at the end of my street, like all your GB News viewers, I would be worried about that. That isn't the same thing as being a violent thug and wanting to...
Exactly.
I think we're in wild agreement. What I'd also say is that at the counter far-right protests, there's also been a lot of violence as well. So what is sauce for the goose should be sauce for the gander. And what I want to see are the police making as many arrests for the counter-protests as they have been for these appalling far-right individuals.
And all of that is that Starmer does not want to curb immigration. It's not a priority for him. He doesn't say it as that.
If he were to say that this was about immigration, that would be giving legitimacy to thugs. Call me conservative, but I think you should be tough on crime.
Talk about Margaret Hodge today. Labour Grande.
I think lock him up.
All right, it's a good point.
Margaret Hodge today said absolutely that Labour was scared to talk about immigration, but not for the reasons that you...
Well, this is interesting.